Hello everyone. Today's module is about cardiorespiratory system in exercise. The cardiorespiratory system in exercise is the most important prerequisite for a workout, a physical activity or any sports activity. The very word suggests that it is a combination of the heart and the lungs. Cardio relates to heart and respiratory relates to lungs. Besides heart and lungs, the various other vital organs which are involved in the system are also a part of this cardiorespiratory system. The fact that we need an adequate blood flow to reach the working muscles, at the same time we also need adequate oxygen to reach the muscle. So, unless and until these two systems work together, that means we have adequate supply of blood to the working muscles as well as the adequate supply of oxygen to the working muscle, we will not be in a position to utilize the substrate for the purpose of energy, which is a prerequisite for our optimal performance during a physical activity or a workout or a sport. So, let us understand the cardiorespiratory system more. The cardiorespiratory system is responsible for the basic physical capacity of endurance. This system comprises of cardiovascular system and respiratory system. The word endurance means that the body should be in a position to sustain the physical activity over a long duration of time. Now, the prerequisite for the body to sustain for a longer period of time when it comes to physical activity, there is a consistent need of blood supply, there is a consistent need of oxygenation, and we know that in the presence of oxygen, the substrate of energies are utilized to the maximum. Thus, a combination of cardiac system and the respiratory system is a prerequisite for adequate physical capacity to be developed. So, what are the functions of cardiorespiratory system? It helps in the transportation of oxygen and carbon dioxide, which I just mentioned, intake of oxygen and elimination of carbon dioxide, which is produced after the substrate is utilized for the purpose of energy. Second, transportation of nutrients, that means the nutrients reaching the working site, the working muscle, getting utilized, and the waste products from the working site or the working muscle removed out of the body. Distribution of hormones, as we understood in our previous modules that there are number of hormones which are involved in our optimal physical performance, our optimal sport performance. Thus, these hormones also need to reach the work site, that is the site at which the muscle is working, and thus this system helps in the distribution of hormones. It also helps in thermoregulation. What is the meaning of thermoregulation? That means regulation of body temperature. We know that through the supply of blood, the blood volume, the heat can be dissipated from the working muscle back to the lungs, to the skin, so that at a given time the body temperature is maintained. Maintaining body temperature is very, very important, because if we do not maintain body temperature or the body temperature at the muscular site where the muscle is working, all the regulatory secretions, whether it is hormones, whether it is proteins, whatever nutrients or regulatory substances which we need for optimal performance will not work efficiently. So, this system plays a very important role in thermoregulation. It also helps in maintaining blood pressure because, like I said, the cardiac output, the stroke volume, all this is determined by our cardiac system, and unless and until a blood pressure which is adequate, which is normal, is maintained, the blood will not be reaching this work site or the site of action of the skeletal muscle adequately. Let's come to breathing. What is breathing? It's the process of gas exchange between the body and the atmosphere. It has two phases, ventilation and diffusion. What is ventilation? Ventilation has two phases, inhalation. Inhalation means the air is sucked from the atmosphere into the lungs, and exhalation means the process of breathing out carbon dioxide from lungs to the atmosphere. Now, this has a lot of relevance in our optimal performance. The body needs to be conditioned and the body needs to learn what is the right way of inhalation and what is the right way of exhalation. Because when we inhale, we suck the air and through that air we get the oxygen into the lungs. By the correct way of inhalation, we can get optimal quantity of oxygen into the lungs, and with training we can increase the capacity of the lungs to hold adequate amount of oxygen. Similarly, the exhalation process also helps us to eliminate the carbon dioxide, which is the waste products, from the lungs to the atmosphere. So, this process of ventilation, that is inhalation and exhalation, needs to be done very, very effectively. Another term which we must understand is diffusion. This is also a very important part of cardiorespiratory system. Diffusion relates to the process of gas exchange between alveoli from the circulatory system through the alveoli membrane. Now, if you look at the diagram, it clearly shows a bronchiole, the alveolus and the blood vessel. So, as the word diffusion means, the movement of the gas or the nutrient is always from high concentration to low. So, when we breathe in oxygen and we oxygenate our lungs, the concentration of oxygen in our lungs is higher, and through the alveoli membrane it gets sucked into the blood, and the blood which is coming back from the working muscle may be high in carbon dioxide, and if the concentration of carbon dioxide is higher in the blood, it gets sucked into again through the alveolus into the bronchiole and is expelled out by the lungs. So, this constant process of inhalation and exhalation along with diffusion which happens between the lungs and the bloodstream is the essence of the working of cardiorespiratory system. Now, when we look at the respiratory response to exercise, we always are taught to breathe in and breathe out. When we breathe in, we take in the breath to take the resistance. When we breathe out, we exhale to remove the end products, that is carbon dioxide. So, breathing in helps to trap more and more oxygen to give us the energy to do the resistance exercise, and breathe out helps us to exhale the end products effectively. So, any kind of physical activity also has a rhythm of breathing in and breathing out, which also needs to be synchronized with the type of workout, exercise or sports. Most of the effective people who do their workout well or the trained sports person are competent to train themselves in their breathing in and breathing out very effectively with their working of muscles. So, during the physical activity, we increase the numbers of breaths per minute, and the volume of air that is inhaled and exhaled also increases. Lung volume is another term which we need to understand. What is lung volume? It is a volume of air which is inhaled or exhaled in each breath. At rest, this volume is 0.5 liters, but when we do optimal physical activity, it can rise up to 3 liters. So, you can imagine what is the immense capacity of the lungs to expand in terms of inhalation and oxygen retention. Breath rate relates to number of breaths taken per minute. At rest, your breath can be 16 to 20 per minute, but when we do optimal physical activity or when we are into workout, it can reach up to 30 to 35 breaths per minute. Now, what is the significance of increase in the breaths per minute? By increase in the breaths per minute, we are essentially increasing the inhalation of the air inside our lungs, and through the inhalation, we are increasing the oxygen intake and thereby increasing the lung capacity. What is lung capacity? It is the maximum amount of air that can fill the lungs. The normal individuals have a capacity of 3 to 4 liters, whereas if you look at the athletic lung capacity, it is close to 7 liter. Now, you must be wondering how is it different and how an athlete can have a lung capacity of 7 liter. The reason is that an athlete is a seasoned sports person who trains his lungs, who trains his breathing technique, who trains his inhalation and exhalation, and through these efforts the lung capacity can be improved and it can reach higher level. And remember, higher the lung capacity, more is the oxygenation, more will be the stamina to perform the exercise or the sport. So, to breathe correctly, it is very important for any physical activity, and it also has an influence on delaying the fatigue, because you know that when we cannot keep up with the pace of our activity and our oxygenation goes down, the body automatically goes into an anaerobic mode of substrate utilization, which in turn produces a number of end products which can cause fatigue to the muscle. So, remember, if we breathe correctly, if we can synchronize our breathing with our workout and our sports or the physical activity which we are performing, we are definitely going to delay the fatigue. So, inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth to keep a uniform respiratory rhythm. Now, what are the functions of cardiovascular system? Let's summarize: transport nutrients and hormones, which we mentioned earlier, removal of waste products, gaseous exchange, building immunity. Now, when we say building immunity, there are a number of immune cells in the body, and we know that these immune cells are also, some are localized to immune organs and some are mobile. So, when we have adequate cardiovascular functioning, these immune cells are reaching the working site very effectively, and we know for sure that during exercise there is production of oxidative stress, and these immune cells help in taking care of that stress, and it is known that as we work out, our immunity tends to improve, because somewhere working out and physical activity has a direct influence on our immune system, and an effective cardiovascular system always helps the immune cells to reach the site of action quickly. The blood vessels, they transport blood, and you know that the essence of a muscle working is the network of blood vessels which it has. The higher the number of blood vessels in a muscle, the more fed that muscle is, the more oxygenated that muscle is, and the more effective that muscle is. Let's look at the components of cardiovascular system. The components of cardiovascular system, as we know, includes blood, includes heart, include blood vessels. Blood is the most important extravascular fluid of the body, and it feeds the body completely from top to bottom. If you look at the muscular system, the entire body is having a variety of muscles throughout, and each muscle is reached by the blood through the blood vessels. And as I mentioned earlier, along with the blood vessels, you have an entire set of nerves which walk along the blood vessels. Now, where is the heart? The heart is in the center, and this is the pumping station to pump the blood adequately, so that there is adequate pressure generated, there is adequate amount of blood which is pushed out of the heart with each contraction, and it reaches not only the vital organs but also the peripheral organs. So, when a muscle is working, all the three things are very important. The heart is important, that is the adequate functioning of heart is important. The blood vessels network is important, especially at the muscular level, and the blood carrying the oxygen and bringing back the waste, all these things are very, very important. Now, we look at the heart. The human heart is an organ which pumps blood throughout the body via the circulatory system. It's an amazing organ which continues to beat 24/7, supplies oxygen, nutrients to the tissues, and removes the waste products from the different ends. We are talking in terms of exercise, and like I said, effectiveness of cardiorespiratory system also strengthens the working of heart. So, when we strengthen our cardiorespiratory system, we are strengthening the functioning of heart, we are enabling the heart to work better, we are enabling the blood to get purified better, we are also enabling the right fuel to reach the muscles effectively, get utilized effectively, and also we are helping to eliminate the end products post workout. So, there is less muscle fatigue. The heart movements are basically of two types: the systolic, that is the contraction, and the diastolic, that is the relaxation. Now, the atrial systole means the atrium contracts to push the blood into the ventricle, while ventricle diastoles, that is relaxes. The ventricle systole means the ventricle contracts to push blood to every cell of the body or lungs, while atrium diastoles. So, there is a continuous movement of blood which is carrying impurities as in the waste products, essentially in the form of carbon dioxide, moving on to another chamber which pushes this impure blood containing carbon dioxide into the lungs, getting purified and then pushed back into the body to reach the various working muscles. So, physical activity increases the cardiovascular system activity because the heart rate increases. We know that when the heart rate increases, it is beneficial for physical activity or exercise because there is a need to carry more oxygen to muscles. In addition to that, we find that the stroke volume also increases. What is stroke volume? Stroke volume is the amount of blood or the volume of blood which is pumped by the left ventricle of the heart with each beat. So, when the heart rate increases, the amount of blood which is pumped out by the chamber of the heart also tends to increase. Now, the resting stroke volume is close to 75 milliliters, whereas the active stroke volume for sedentary people can be 140 milliliters, and for athletes it can be 190 milliliters. So, you can see that from the resting level, when we push ourselves to any kind of physical activity, the higher the level of physical activity, the higher is the heart rate, the higher is the stroke volume. So, with regular physical activity, we condition the heart to increase its heart rate, and more than the heart rate, with conditioning, it is the stroke volume which tends to increase, and this helps the blood to reach the muscles. So, what is the outcome? The outcome is that the cardiac output increases. The cardiac output is the volume of blood which is pumped by the heart per minute. The resting cardiac output is 5 to 6 liters, whereas the active cardiac output is 15 to 20 liters. So, you can imagine that when a person is into a physical activity or workout or a sport, the heart or the cardiac system completely supports to increase the pumping of the blood per minute, and this is beneficial to enable the blood reach the working muscle. When we practice exercise, the distribution of blood flow in our body changes, and we know that during rest it is possible that only 20% of the blood may be flowing to the muscle, but when we are physically active, almost 80% of the blood may be flowing to the muscle. So, like we mentioned earlier, brain is the only organ wherein the blood supply is never decreased, but the body adjusts or makes this kind of an adaptation that whenever there is a higher level of physical activity, a major chunk of blood is diverted to the working muscle. The reason is to provide fuel, to provide nutrients, so that there is optimal performance. Like I mentioned, the only organ that needs the same quantity of oxygen is the brain. So, the supply of blood to the brain is never decreased. So, what are the functions of heart? The heart helps us generate the adequate blood pressure. When I say adequate, neither should it be low blood pressure nor should it be high blood pressure, because both the conditions indicate that our heart is not working properly. It routes the blood to the lungs, that is, it separates the pulmonary and systemic circulation. So, very beautifully, like I said, that the blood carrying carbon dioxide moves from one chamber to the other and the oxygenated blood moves out for circulation. So, it ensures one way of blood flow. It changes in contraction rate as per the need. Like I said, when we are working out more, our heart rate increases, our stroke volume increases. So, it helps the working muscle. Now, the blood delivery to changing metabolic needs is also the function of the heart. So, wherever there is a higher need, the blood from the heart is diverted to that particular organ. Transporting nutrients from digestive system to the body, this is again a very important function of the heart, because the pumping, adequate pumping of the blood, we can ensure that all the nutrients which we consume reach the blood and the site of action. It carries oxygen from lungs to all body cells and removes carbon dioxide from the cell, which we all learnt earlier. Now, blood vessels, they transport blood throughout the body. There are three types of blood vessels. You have the arteries, which move blood away from the heart. You have the veins, which move blood towards the heart. You have the capillaries, which are the tiny blood vessels that connect arteries and veins. So, all these three blood vessels feed the muscle, and the capillary meshwork which is there at the muscular level is a most important prerequisite for the supply of blood to the working muscle. Thus, health of all these blood vessels is very important for optimal performance. So, to conclude, what have we learned in this module? We have learnt all about the cardiac system, all about the respiratory system. In the cardiac system, we have learnt about the parts of cardiac system, that is the heart, the blood vessels. In the respiratory system, we have learnt about lungs, the trachea, the bronchioles, the alveoli. We have understood about what is cardiac output, what is stroke volume, what is ventilation, what is diffusion, what is inhalation, what is exhalation, and what is happening when these two systems come together at the cellular level. What is the significance of heartbeat? What is the significance of our breathing rate? These are all concepts which have got cleared in this session, and they are very, very meaningful to understand our optimal performance for any physical activity or a workout or a specific sport.